Welcome everybody to CNE Online. We're pretty new. This is really our first week in rolling out online programming. I don't know if some of you have maybe been to some of the other things. I recognize some names from recent trainings. So hopefully things are going well. I will have an evaluation at the end to ask questions about the training in general, but also to add some pieces around online training if there's things we can improve there. Today we're going to have Dr. Maryfrances Porter talking to us about shifting our programming and data collection as we make the pivots that I'm sure all of you are making. I know CNE is making right now. Just a couple of things around etiquette. One thing I'll mention right now anyway is that if you do have a question, feel free to send me a message and I'll keep an eye on those, and I can open up, unmute you, or ask you to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question or make your comment, and just to help manage that piece of things. Dr. Porter is a local therapist. She works with nonprofits on data and evaluation. She's worked with CNE for many years, helping us build out the systems that we use to track our impact. I've really enjoyed working with her in the time that I've been at CNE, and I know that she's brought a lot of value to other organizations, both through the training she's done with CNE and also through the consulting work that she does. So we're really happy to have her back, and from there I'll just hand it over to Maryfrances.
Good morning, everyone. It's nice to virtually see you, and I'm glad that you came to join us. The CNE and I started talking about 2 weeks ago about what kinds of things you all might need to help navigate the whole changes, all the changes as a result of COVID. And this is what I have come up with based on the work that I'm doing with nonprofits individually, based on what I have seen come through my inbox, and also based on what I know about traumatic events and shifting resources. My family actually, I was here in Charlottesville at the time, but my family actually survived Katrina. And so I kept a lot of tabs on what was going on in New Orleans and how all of that kind of stuff evolved over time. So I'm hoping to be able to share some of what I know. I also really want to be able to create a community of sharing information. And I know CNE wants to do that too. Because since none of us have actually done this before, really the best way to learn is from each other. At the end, well, there'll be a couple of times throughout the presentation where I'll ask you guys to share some of what you're doing, and we'll pause for 20 seconds or so to see if people have things that they want to share, and I would really encourage you to do so. Just let Andrew know, say I have something to share, and he'll call on you. I also encourage you guys to let the CNE and or me know what kinds of other support in any realm, but for me, especially in programming and data collection, that you need to help feel more confident navigating this novel situation. Before we get started with the presentation, I'm going to make an attempt to create some online etiquette kinds of things. If you guys could please close your email and turn off your phone so that you're able to attend and respond, that would be awesome. I think Andrew is muting everybody's mics, but if you could make sure that your mic is muted unless you're talking, that just helps reduce distraction. If you have a comment, please type comment in the chat function, and Andrew will invite you to speak. And you can certainly use the chat function to ask a question at any time. You definitely do not need to wait until I've stopped talking. One of the benefits of the online platform is that you can just ask questions at any time and it doesn't interrupt the flow of conversation. And then we'll call on you as soon as I finish a sentence. And then I'll answer questions and comments in the order they were received. I do want to start by giving us an opportunity to introduce ourselves, talk about our name, our organization, our role, and some sort of silver lining to COVID. I actually very strongly believe that there's going to be some real amazing innovations and things that come out of this experience for our community and the nation and the world. Perhaps not balancing all the disruption and trauma, but there'll be some really amazing things that come out of it. And I'm not sure how many people are online right now. Andrew is going to maybe break us into a couple of groups. And so I'm going to let him use his best judgment as to how many groups to break us into. But I'll start by saying, of course, I'm Maryfrances Porter. I have a small evaluation firm here in town called Partnerships for Strategic Impact. And I am the founder and the president of the organization. I have a new business partner coming on board with me shortly. Her name is Allison Nagel West. She's also a psychologist. One of the things that makes working with nonprofits and psychology work together, even though it seems like it may not, is that we have research degrees in measuring really difficult things like wellness and depression and quality of life and happiness and things like that. And a lot of what nonprofits are measuring are things exactly along those lines. And so we like to put our research skills into practice by helping you guys be able to measure the impact of the work that you do. Silver lining to COVID, I've seen a number of funny comments on Twitter about being introverts and how COVID is really kind of set up for us. And despite the fact that I have two businesses where I have to interact with people a lot, I am actually an introvert. So while I miss being in the community, I actually am loving being at home. I'm loving extra time with my family around dinner. I'm loving growing seeds for the first time and getting ready to plant a garden for the first time. And so those are really amazing things that I didn't know was going to happen. And my daughter's home from college, which is a bummer for her, but really wonderful for us. We love having her here. So I'm going to pause a moment, let Andrew break us up, and ask you guys to please introduce yourselves before we get started. Okay. Host.
Did you get an invitation, Allison?
Hold on.
Hi, Sandra. How are you doing? Oh. Sorry, I've just unmuted you. How are you doing?
Great. How are you?
Good,
Sorry
thanks.
for being late.
Oh, that's okay. Everybody is they're just doing introductions. We have sort of broken out into small groups, just checking in. So what organization are you from?
Leadership Falk here.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks for coming. Looks like people are headed back now.
Will you know when we're all back, Andrew?
Yeah, I think that I've given people about 30 more seconds, and they'll all be sent back here. So they'll see a timer telling them to come in.
I need to learn whatever it is you're doing because I'm going to run my program day on Tuesday with 20 people, and the most I've had is 5 so far in a group.
Yeah, I haven't done breakout rooms either. Andrew said, I'm going to do breakout rooms. I said, well, that's fabulous. Let's see how that works.
Yeah. So I'll be curious to know how it does. Sorry, I missed it.
I'll send something around. All right, everybody's back now.
Awesome. Does everyone know how to use the chat function? If you don't, now would be a good time to raise your hand so that we can let you know. All right, I'm not seeing any hands raised, so I think we're good. All right, so let's go ahead. So the first strategy is focusing your programming on the core of your mission. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how I've seen this happen in a few organizations in the community so far, and also talk a little bit about how you might talk to your executive committee about doing this. The first thing that is really important is for us to be thinking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which I think most of us are familiar with. And this, in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, what we know is that in order to be able to function, we have to have these very basic needs met at the bottom, these physiological needs for having food and water and warmth and rest and shelter, and then these safety needs here to have security and safety. These are really threatened for everybody in our community at this point, right? People are losing their jobs, they're sick, they don't necessarily have enough money to be able to continue forward, nor do people necessarily feel safe being in the community and getting some of these needs met. So for all of us, and especially the people that we're serving who tend to be under-resourced to begin with, these are really the kinds of needs that people are having at this moment. Because of the physical distancing that's going on. Oh, am I not sharing my screen? Let's see. I thought that I was. Hold on. Whoops. All right. Is that better? Now I can't see the chat function.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're there.
Awesome.
I'll monitor the chat.
Thank you. So I was talking about these basic safety needs for physiological needs and safety. And then I was just getting ready to say that because of the physical distancing that's going on right now, a lot of people are having a really hard time feeling disconnected from people that they love and from their friends and relationships. Once these basic things are met, then we have room to start feeling, to start looking for ways of feeling like we're contributing, that we're accomplishing things in life. And then after we're able to do that, we're actually able to move up into this place where we're able to self-actualize, find meaning in our life, be creative, and those kinds of things. But it's very hard to be creative and find meaning in our own life if we're really worried about where we're going to get food and whether or not we're going to be able to keep our house as shelter for ourselves. And so right now is a really good time to think about what is it that you do with your clients and how is it that you can come down in what you do to help make sure that people have those basic needs met so that they're able to continue to thrive after COVID is over, the physical distancing piece. So the first question you want to sit down and think about and then present to your executive committee or your board is, at your core, what does your organization do? A lot of organizations spread. They do lots of different kinds of things, but at the very core, we are usually helping people do a few things. We're usually helping to make sure that they have food, to make sure that they have shelter, to make sure that they have basic health needs met. And then we're able to help, some organizations are able to help people in some of those higher order needs. And so one way of thinking about what you do at your core is, what community level need are you actually working to eliminate? Are you trying to eliminate obesity? Are you trying to eliminate poverty? Are you trying to eliminate diabetes? Are you trying to eliminate joblessness? The second question to ask yourselves, and I'm sure all of you have already started to do this, is what can reasonably be done virtually or with enough precautions so that clients and staff feel safe? Once you've identified the things that you are doing most elementally and then what you can do virtually, the next question to ask is, what can be done that most essentially meets the clients, the needs of your clients, and is within your mission? So I was having a conversation with City of Promise about this, and they know that the people in the community need food. They know that that's the case. They also know that it's not within their mission to actually provide food for people. There are other organizations in town that are providing food for people. So then, if that's already being done, if that basic need is being done, what can they do in addition that is in the core of their mission, which is education and helping adults get credentials and jobs? What can they do that's most effective for their population? And we'll talk about what they've decided to do in a moment. The other thing that is really important to think about is making sure that you start in a way that is very small and circumscribed. You do not want to bite off more than you can do. You don't want to stress out your staff, who are also feeling vulnerable and having a hard time meeting their basic needs. You don't want to stress out your system of supports. You want to be able to do what you can with the money and the staffing that you have. And it is okay to start small. You can always add things to it later. But if you can start with one thing, one organization I work with talked about creating their COVID work plan and said that if you couldn't fit it all on one page, it was probably too much. So whatever it is you're doing, you write it on one page and you say, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. Part of writing it on one page is also to be able to clearly articulate what it is that you're doing. This is really important, and it might also mean articulating what you're not doing, so that it's really clear where the boundaries, this is the circumscribed part, around your activities are so that you can move forward. Let's talk about a couple of examples, and then I'm going to ask you guys to share some of your examples. So the Women's Initiative, they're a nonprofit in town that provide psychotherapy to women who don't have the financial means to get therapy. And in typical times, they're providing one-on-one in-office therapy. They're providing all sorts of different kinds of groups that are therapeutic and build relationships. They do walking and meditation. They provide all sorts of wellness tips. And actually, the director of the Women's Initiative also is very active on the local Coalition for Mental Wellness. They have been able to pretty much, as I have in my psychotherapy practice, pivot from doing in-person therapy to doing online therapy. And so they are able to do the core of their mission to provide that individual psychotherapy to people just over the internet. What they're doing much less of, if any at all, is the group work that provides also those affiliation needs to people. That is hard to provide. It doesn't translate really well, and it doesn't meet the very core need of what people need right now, which is to help them navigate and survive this trauma and this experience. What is the CNE doing? Well, the CNE generally provides training and support to nonprofits, and they're totally able to do that, like we are right now in this webinar. And they're also able to focus in on those basic needs for the nonprofits. The basic needs for the nonprofits are HR needs and financial needs and programming needs. And so they started to create this strategic response series to be able to help support you guys. I would also encourage you to answer the survey that CNE has been putting around. I'm going to ask Andrew to send the link out through the chat function also. It was also in the email that you guys got this morning reminding you of this session. It's how they're starting to survey the nonprofits and saying, what are the basic needs that you have? How can we support you getting through this time? So they're able to do a lot of their programming, just shifting it a little bit. Last night they had their leadership circle just online where people were able to share. I had mentioned City of Promise before. A lot of the work that they do are in groups, after school tutoring, in-school support. None of those kinds of things can happen. People don't have as much access to online. So what is it that they can do? There are several things that they've decided they can do. One is they can help increase the access people have to the services and supports that are available in the community. So they can let people know through their existing channels and Facebook and things like that, what kinds of things are happening. The other thing that they can do is they can help families navigate the academic resources that are available online for people that the school system has put online. There's actually a lot of information online that's kind of hard to navigate and kind of hard to figure out what is important for your child to do, and they can help do that. What they're also really focusing on is continuing to build the relationships and continuing to help people feel connected, and while also being safe in the neighborhood. And they're collecting the stories of the people in the neighborhood, how they're meeting this challenge and how they're overcoming it. We're going to talk a little bit about the importance of stories in a minute. The City Schoolyard Garden is another organization that is pivoting. They typically help provide educational and respite opportunities for children and staff in the city schoolyard gardens. They try to create opportunities for children to try new kinds of produce. They have local produce in the lunch line, all these kinds of things. That's not happening right now because there is no lunch line and there are no kids in the garden at schools right now. But what they also do is they coordinate the Charlottesville Food Justice Network, and they have been working together very intensely to help make sure that all children in the city have access to food 5 days a week. The United Way typically has sort of 3 program areas. One is around supporting the community in access to early child care and education. Another is providing support in the community for organizations to help families have financial resiliency. And the third one is to coordinate volunteer efforts and local philanthropy in the community. All of that is still things that they're thinking about, but where they've really been focusing their resources is in a collaboration with the city and with CACF and with the Support Seville organization that popped up after COVID to help get money into the hands of people who have been laid off, who have financial needs, and into nonprofits as quickly as possible. So for the last several weeks, they've been working in collaboration to set up systems to be able to collect the money and bring it together, and then to be able to distribute the money to the community. And that's been pretty much 99% of what they've been doing for the last few weeks. The other thing that they've been doing is in the realm of early childhood, which is helping some of the child care providers in town be able to pivot from providing child care to kids in general to being able to provide child care for our first responders. So I want to pause for just a minute here and ask you guys to share some of the ways in which your organization has already worked to pivot and identify the core of your mission. And so I'll pause for a moment and ask you to please let Andrew know if you have something that you feel like you can share with the rest of us around this. Okay. Cliff, can you unmute yourself and just say a little bit more about what it is that you're doing?
Sure. I work for Virginia Legal Aid Society. Our administrative offices are based in Lynchburg, and we cover sort of from Lynchburg down to Danville, and then all the way across the state to Suffolk. That's our territory.
Mm-hmm.
And what we have, our core legal mission, just the simply, representing clients and giving them advice. We're finding that we're able to do almost all of that. We do client intake remotely anyway. That's by phone, so that really hasn't changed. Although we've needed to get the word out that we're still up and running. We've gotten fewer phone calls, even though we're ready to take them. The part that we've had to cut back on is the outreach part of our mission, which is usually we like to not just represent clients, but spread legal knowledge and go out and do like lunchtime talks or something where we're talking to a group of people and saying, hey, have you thought about getting a will for yourselves, or here's some aspects to domestic violence is more than just getting protective orders. There are these other pieces of it.
Yeah.
And that we've had to shut that part down pretty much. I think at some point we might try to think about doing some virtual stuff, but right now we sort of had a calendar of events that we were starting to build for this year.
So you're actually working a lot like the Women's Initiative. You're still able to provide that one-on-one support, but the sort of group support, the sort of speaking out word, you haven't been doing as much. I do imagine that when you guys feel ready, that the CNE will be well positioned to help you figure out how to do sort of general outreach using webinars. So thank you.
You guys are pretty good at that, yes.
Yeah. Thanks very much.
Sure, thank you.
Let's see, Madison House. Roland, can you talk a little bit about what you guys have been doing? I'm curious how you're extending virtual options when you actually have students participating virtually.
Yeah, again, Roland Johnson, Director of Programs at Madison House. A couple of things that we're doing, I think, for our core mission is really sort of creating lifelong volunteers, having students engage in creating really meaningful, mutually beneficial partnerships in our community. So in that, we've kind of taken two approaches. One is encouraging our students to leave campus so they are not a strain on the resources in Charlottesville was a big piece for us and core to our mission, because we care about this. We care about Charlottesville. We care about the surrounding areas, and we know having the influence of about 2,500 or so plus students encouraging to leave grounds was a huge asset, and hopefully it helped in some ways as much as possible. A few other things that we've been trying to do from a virtual volunteering standpoint is to involve our students that care in a way that isn't increasing burden, because managing volunteers or intakes of things can be a challenge, and sort of pacing ourselves to get students involved, seeing where there's interest at amongst our current volunteering base, pulling student leaders together that they can begin to coordinate, and then directly reaching out to some of our partners and figuring out what they need. Like Big Sibs works with Big Brothers and Big Sisters, making sure there's a virtual place of checking in with their littles, because this is a pretty traumatic time for kids. For our adopted grandparent program, for example, seeing if there's ways with the full care facilities, because making sure those seniors don't feel forgotten in those facilities. So some of our students are able to reach out via phone and some other ways with some relationships that they built. And the next phase for us is figuring out how we better support youth through some virtual learning opportunities where we can maybe partner up with schools or families or other organizations that actually might be on this call, and figuring out how we can be a support to parents that are now having to, tutor, manage, work, and do sometimes all these things with their kids at home. And so pulling together resources. And that's kind of how we've been working right now, trying to execute our mission from a distance. And then as you talk about that one-on-one stuff, I feel like I'm talking a lot, so I'm gonna stop talking here soon. It's just
It's very interesting.
with our students, we do some advising and leadership pieces. So trying to do those virtually has been interesting. We've been relying on the relationships we built with those students during the academic year, but using this platform as a way to both support them. Some of our students have been quarantined because they had to go back home to other countries, and just trying to be supportive as we can in that process. Some can't go home because they have immunocompromised family members, and sort of laying that role as well. So to be supportive around. So I'll stop talking from that point.
Well, I'm very interested in the fact that you're also really focused on the students at UVA, not just the community. That's a wonderful example of how you're sort of focusing on your mission and making sure that they're getting some of the supports that they need. And also, I had no idea that you guys were providing virtual volunteering opportunities. So I will say, I encourage people to call you, and I'm certainly going to send some people your way too.
It's in its infancy, so we're trying to figure out how we do it in a way that makes sense, right?
Right.
So
Yeah. Absolutely.
Really preliminary.
We're all trying to figure it out, right? It's all a partnership. So if someone has a need, it's nice to call and say, "Hey, how might we make this work?" Right? Wonderful. Thank you so much. Ginger, what are you guys doing over at Java?
So Java obviously runs a lot of programs, and all of them are focused on older adults or individuals with disabilities. And in order to not be a nexus of the spread of corona among older adults, we certainly terminated a lot of our programs that were face-to-face and anything that required contact. So our adult care centers closed and our community centers closed, but we have been working really hard to call all of those seniors individually. We've identified new ways to provide them the congregate meal that they needed in order to maintain their nutrition. We've been doing online activities on Facebook, and we're really using Facebook to spread a lot of information that people might need, like how do the one-time payments come to people who are just on Social Security and who have never filed or haven't filed taxes in years. And we're even doing our case management services via phone. So older adults who are struggling can still call in, and we will coordinate their community services for them on the phone versus going into their home. So, I mean, we're capable of doing a lot of stuff actually via the internet and using things like Zoom for our insurance counseling and stuff. It's pretty amazing that we've been able to do what we've been able to do with our population and do it in such a very different way.
Thank God we still have phones.
Yeah. Some people still do.
Yeah, some people still do. Thank you, Ginger. That's awesome. Lighthouse, what are you guys doing?
So this is Cecilia Glenn. I'm the production manager at Lighthouse, and we're very grateful too that we've been able to shift everything kind of online. The core of who we are really is storytelling, and feel like we've been able to maintain that and grow that. We were able to, some of the workshops that we had been already having with our students, we just moved online, and we probably started about 10 new workshops and expanded it to a lot of different ages. We kind of tend to stay in the 3rd grade to high school range, but we've expanded even to adults to give them something after their work hours, just to engage with people and take a break from schoolwork for some students who are in school. And we also have transitioned to be able to be accessible to everyone, to place the value of what our workshops would be, but to have a pay what you can policy so that no one's inhibited from participating if that's something they want to do. And and then we also did this. We started kind of a film challenge that anyone is able to do, because people can make films from their phones too. And so we have different prompts every couple of weeks, and have gotten some really, some of them are funny and some of them are really heartwarming stories of just how people are coping right now. And we look forward to hopefully one day soon filming those in person, but we're sharing them as they come right now.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Marin, how has the Paramount been shifting? You guys are probably one of the biggest shifts out there.
Yeah, I am Marin Garland, and I'm the director of marketing at the theater. So we have been closed as a mass gathering place since March 11th. So it's been a lot of events that have been impacted. We have moved everything through the end of June currently. So a lot of our efforts on programming right now are that basic, just trying to help renters as well as events that we were presenting move to later in the year so that we can reassess and see what it'll look like for us to be able to open our doors again. So while we are doing some of that preparation, we are a venue, so we didn't know how much content we had. So we had been spending the last few weeks really pushing storytelling, which has always been a dream, but we always promote individual events. So we have been sharing a lot. We created a Blast from the Past campaign. So every day at 3 p.m. on social media and on our blog, we post images and stories from past events and performers, whether that have been at the theater. We are creating crossword puzzles weekly that either focus on events or just things that can help us educate, enchant, enrich, and enlighten the community just in a different way right now. We've put together some digital puzzles, like jigsaw puzzles that you can do, things that we can send out to have in our patrons' inbox to say, we're here when you are ready to be educated, enchanted, enriched, enlightened, and here are some ways that in this brief intermission that we are taking, that we can do that.
I actually wondered, I'm just going to throw out there, whether or not there could be like, sort of like a book club, but around movies or experiences, like musical experiences, where if people watched it afterwards, they could talk together about it or something. That seemed to me to be something that would be awesome. I don't know if that's like a extra idea or an interesting idea.
Yes. Thank you for that sneak peek of what is coming. So we're trying to figure out, because the Paramount was originally a movie house, and we do continue to show movies on the big screen. So ways that we can maybe have an intro to a movie, suggest people watch the movie and how they can meet up after and talk. Same thing with, yes, it's a great idea, and we're figuring out how to make that work digitally.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The garden, man, you guys have a huge challenge too, very much like the Paramount. What are you guys doing, Jill?
It's true, and I just wanted to give a shout out to the Paramount, because the last event I attended was the Banff Film Festival, so it's near and dear to my heart as both an annual event that we like to go to, but also just as the last time we were out in a large gathering and saw a lot of friends. So it's heartwarming to think about it. Yeah, this is a big time of year for us. We haven't built the garden yet, but we do a lot of educational walks on the garden site this time of year. And obviously that had to be either postponed or canceled altogether. So we have moved a lot, everything we're doing to our social media and as well as our website, and are just trying to share either feel-good photos of nature and just spring, or actual information. A lot of people are out in the garden for the first time on their own gardens, and are planting in pots or whatever. And so it's an opportunity for us to try to share information with them. We're doing, I'm a cyclist, and I couldn't help but notice last weekend when I was out on a bike ride that I saw more people out in their yards, including children, that day than I had seen in 15 years of cycling. So I think that this will be a big year for people to take a lot of pride in what they're growing. So we're going to be, running like different on our social media, send photos of your garden, whatever, native plant gardens or children's gardens or zany gardens or whatever, just so that people have a forum to share what they're doing and also their experiences. So we're trying to just to reach out and inform and delight in whatever way we can virtually.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Michael, let's hear what you guys are doing at Bridgeline.
So we support adults with brain injuries, and we have 4 different programs, and they've each sort of had to adapt differently. Our case management program, which serves 10 counties, is going all virtual. And we have a day program in Charlottesville at the X building that has stopped meeting, but the members there, a big part of what they came for was the social interaction. So we've set up, Google Hangouts and stuff periodically with the members there. And then our residential houses in Belmont are still fully functioning, but with, increased precautions. A silver lining for us is that we are realizing how much we can actually do virtually. And one of the biggest barriers to delivering brain injury services was transportation. And so, as we're sort of forced to adapt to this time, we might be able to continue a lot of these practices that we're adopting even into the future and serve people in really rural places. So there's a big silver lining for us.
Awesome. Yeah, I would love to, I really love hearing what everybody's doing because it's hard to know what everybody's doing. And if you guys like the sharing, please put in the evaluation that you'd like more of it, or let Andrew know through the survey that you'd like more of it. Because I feel like there's all sorts of ways of connecting with people on the phone or virtually and helping to create a sense of community that we're not quite using yet. And I'd love to share ideas. I know I have a middle schooler at home who's crazy bored because she doesn't have a real virtual connection with a lot of her friends. And so she feels very isolated. And Triple C has done, 1 hour game time with kids, which she just loved. And I would love to be able to create opportunities for people to think about creative ways of creating community, either on the phone or virtually. So let's keep going.
Can I jump in for just 1 second?
Yeah.
We'd like to start highlighting some of the things that organizations are doing to pivot around this stuff. So in addition to the folks who have already shared in the chat, if you have something that you want to pass on to CNE, you could do that now in the chat or send me an email later on, and we'll try to highlight those in newsletters in the coming weeks.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that kind of sharing is really critical. We all know what the old methods are. So strategy 2 is focusing on productivity or output. We do not know what the impact of our work is going to be. And there is no evidence base for us to be able to even draw from. So what is really most important when we're trying to deliver services in a situation like this, fortunately, is really just our productivity and reach. How many people have we touched? How many people have interacted with the information that we've put out there? The most basic kind of impact after reach and productivity is really just increasing access to people for resources. So how many people have you, like Madison House, actually helped people not be on campus, which is an interesting kind of access. It's almost the opposite. But how have you been able to help people be more safe? How have you been able to help people access the resources that are in town? A few of you guys might be able to start looking at the knowledge, skills, ability, and motivation of people who have gotten your services. CNE can certainly do that. Lighthouse can certainly do that based on the kinds of programming that they're doing, where you send back out surveys or ask people at the end, what do you have now that you didn't have before our services began? But a lot of organizations don't have the ability to do that kind of surveying. They're really focusing on the reach and being able to increase access to other services for clients. So when you find yourself without a whole lot of immediate impact information, that is okay. I want to give you guys a little bit of a release from all the surveying and data collection that you were doing before, and really focusing on this. I'm noticing that Catherine is saying, when would that sort of surveying be appropriate? So that is really a difficult question, right? Because it kind of depends on your population. I would think that to the extent that the Paramount or the Garden was able to contact people and say, hey, how have you enjoyed the kinds of programming that we've put out? That would be fine now, because you guys are at the level of creating creativity and inspiration and things like that. So people who are accessing that probably have the cognitive resources to be able to respond. The folks that are being connected to through Java's phone calls to help create community, you can probably ask them surveys because you've already got them on the phone. You might only be able to ask them 1 or 2 questions, but you can ask them, you know, how lonely are you feeling? How important is it that I call? When would you like me to call again? Some of the other kinds of services, you might sort of need to wait and see whether or not asking people surveys is useful, or ask 1 or 2 people who you're serving. If I were to give you a survey or ask you on the phone or internet wise to fill out a survey, would you feel comfortable doing that? Is that something that you'd be able to help us do? What it does make me think about, though, is how important the stories are going to be overall. And I really love what Lighthouse is doing and also what City of Promise is doing in collecting stories, because that is going to be, I think, the most important thing that we're going to get out of this period. How are people struggling? How are they overcoming? What kinds of challenges are they experiencing? What kinds of things have worked for them? How are they creating connections? How are you guys delivering your services? All of this is a really rich learning experience. Usually we don't focus as much on stories because they take a lot of time to collect, and they even take more time to pull the data out of. But right now, this is the richest, most emergent way of understanding what the impact of COVID and the impact of our services are. So one way of thinking about collecting these stories, and I would love to hear what Lighthouse is doing more, but it's the StoryCorps model. For anyone who's not familiar with StoryCorps, I put the link on it up here, but it's just an audio recording. People sit down and they ask someone else questions, and the people just answer. NPR does a lot of editing on these to help create these beautiful little 5-minute stories about people's lives. But you can audio record, video record, you can do speech to text. It's essentially blogging, and collect some of the stories from folks that you're serving. One of the things that I think is particularly important about stories that I want to kind of mention here real quick is that there is a phenomenon called post-traumatic thriving. And the first time I heard this term came out of Katrina and a researcher who wrote a book called Paradise Built in Hell. And what she found out in the work that she was doing was that people who had a sense of agency and who were able to make some difference, however small, in their community during the trauma, those were the people who were more likely to thrive as a result of the trauma. To say, wow, I was able to do this, and I'm going to take this trauma and I'm going to turn it into something good for myself. So she'd studied women who were in community college, and what she found was that women who moved away and or had the dysphoria that happened with Katrina and had that sense of agency took this opportunity to remake their life. They took the opportunity to get out of bad relationships, to get out of bad situations, and to create opportunity for themselves. Post-traumatic stress comes from the exact opposite, the sense that you don't have agency, that you can't do anything to change your circumstance, and that you are a victim of your circumstance. If you have thriving, you can certainly feel like you were a victim, like this happened to me and I didn't ask for it, but it means that you're able to take that information and do something productive with it. So as we're working with people, helping to give them that sense of what can you do, what feels good to you, how can you change your circumstance just a little bit, that can also be really important. And sharing stories about how people have done that, how you guys have done it in your organizations, and how your clients have done it in your lives are critically important. All right. Flexible data collection. This is really important. We're going to talk about 2 ways in which you can be flexible in your data collection. Some of you guys are probably able to collect data in the same way that you've been collecting data before. Maybe you don't have quite as many fields. Maybe you don't have quite as many people. Maybe you don't have quite all the surveys that you had before. But you can still do data collection. What I'm doing with City of Promise is we actually created some Google Sheets so that all the staff could go in and record what it is that they were doing. How often did they call people? What were people's needs? What kinds of services did they provide? You really want to focus on how many people you touch in this. So in City of Promise, I asked them not to really focus on how many contacts they had in a week, because that might be 3, because it might be, you know, really hard to get hold of someone, or they might have had to have a series of conversations or one long conversation. But more importantly, how many people did they reach, and what did they do in that conversation? You may need to change what it is that you're counting week to week or month to month, and that's okay. You can be flexible that way. One week you might want to count the number of people that you called and what their concerns were, and the next week you might want to record the number of people that you talk to about how they can get educational content, or how they can connect with services. And that's okay. Right now, there is no rule for what it is you need to do, but you do want to capture what you're doing flexibly. Your staff can also tell their stories and help talk about what it is that they're doing week to week. And again, Google Documents is a super easy way of doing this. You can create a template for Google Documents, or you can create forms that can help staff enter what it is that they're doing that's important. And you may think about this as a daily or weekly diary or blog. What were 3 things this week that your staff found that were remarkable, that were really good, that happened to their clients or with their job? What were 3 things this week that were really challenging, or that seemed really bad, that your staff were struggling with this week? And what were 3 things that surprised them, that made them just sort of step back for a moment, good or bad? Having people record these kinds of things can provide vital information about how to evolve your programming over time, and might have often come when originally in your organization in small meetings among people. But now, because we're all in different places and in our houses, it's hard to capture this, but being able to keep this running tally and diary can be really important. The 4th strategy, and I hope that you guys have already started doing this, is talking to your funders. We are all in this together, and funders know that too. They're struggling in the same ways you are. So talk to them and tell them what it is you're doing, what kinds of things you're counting, and what kinds of stories you're collecting, and make sure that they're on board with you around doing that. My guess is that 90% of them are going to be totally on board with you doing that. But if you don't talk to them and talk about how they've shifted your focus, then they have no opportunity to partner with you in that regard. The 5th strategy, and actually a super important one, is for you to ensure all your pre-COVID data is entered. So anyone who is out there sitting on data that has not been entered by now, you really should prioritize getting it entered. I will tell you that your staff will forget if you wait any longer. Next week should be the week that you get it all entered in. This is going to be super important so that funders know that you were on track before COVID struck, that you were doing the work that you had intended to do, and then you're able to pivot and say, this is how we changed our story. I'm going to pause for just a moment. I do have one bonus strategy to talk to you guys about, but I want to pause for just a moment and see if there's any questions that pop up on the message board.
I'm just going to pull us away from the presentation for a second, and if someone wants to like throw a hand up or just unmute yourself and start talking, I think that's fine. Did you have something you wanted to add, Roland?
Yeah, I think I got the wrong hand icon. Sorry, folks.
It's okay. I like the
that helps. That helps.
One of the things I'm always cognizant of, sorry with the light, I'm always cognizant of is in these situations when you're capturing stories and information, how do you strike that balance to not be exploitive of the situation? especially when you're dealing with stories that may straddle vulnerable populations or marginalized populations. Just sort of thinking about any guidance you may think about in that.
So I tend to take a strengths-based perspective to that. So you can say, what kinds of challenges are you facing and how have you overcome them? And so really focusing on the successes that people have had can be a really powerful way to express both the struggle and what they've done to overcome it. Maybe all the struggles, you don't want to put all of those in some montage, like here's how everybody's struggling. That ends up being sort of struggle porn, right? But people are very interested in how people have overcome or how your organization has helped them. So some of the prompts that are sort of StoryCorps prompts that City of Promise is using are things like, not only how has COVID changed your life or what are you hoping for when things, when this COVID isolation is over, but how is City of Promise helping you? How can we help you better? There are also some research that shows that helping someone craft their own strengths-based narrative can be really helpful for their long-term mental health and them being able to realize what their agency is and being able to sort of move forward in the world. So even just asking people to talk about how they overcame things or what they did can be really powerful. And even if you're inviting people in to talk about what their struggle is, say, well, what have you done? Like, what have you done already? What have you tried? And then helping point out what some of their strengths are is a real way of turning a sense of victimhood to a sense of success and ability. Does that help?
Yes, it does. I'm sorry, I got photobombed by the little one here. So
that's okay. I love little photo bombs. I want to go back to the PowerPoint slide for just a moment and talk about this last piece of information before we're already out of time, but I'm going to take you one extra minute, which is that it is really important to rein in your inner visionary. Right now, all of the people who are running organizations, we're really, really good and probably run our organization really well because we think about the future, anticipate the future, and are always like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ahead in what it is that's going to happen. And I think it's wonderful to be thinking like, a couple of weeks ahead or be thinking about how you can evolve what you're doing now. But what's really important is things are not going to go back to normal. Whatever it is that happens after COVID is going to be different. There's going to be new needs. There's going to be new priorities. There's going to be new technologies and new opportunities that we can't even imagine right now. And so if we're able to really use that visionary energy that we have to be creative now and to accept and be in the upheaval as opposed to trying to fight it and use it as a catalyst for helping to be creative and innovative and realize that everything that is happening right now is not bad, but is an opportunity for us to expand services. Sort of like with the folks with the brain injury, we had been trying to deal with transportation and now we realize that we don't have to have as much transportation. We can leverage this and create opportunities for people virtually. And maybe some of the energy that was being put into paying for transportation can be put into paying for adequate cameras for people to be able to participate and accessibility options for people to be able to participate. So all the creativity that you usually put into thinking forward, I really encourage you to put into being creative right now and figuring out how to be the best COVID provider you can without worrying about how you're going to be the best post-COVID provider you can, because we have no idea what that's going to look like. I will stay online for a little bit and answer any additional questions or facilitate any additional discussion folks have, but I really, really appreciate you participating.